and welcome. This is the Forever Blue podcast. My name is Ian Cheeseman, and in a moment, I'll introduce you to my guests on this edition of the podcast, which, of course, is ostensibly a Manchester City podcast. But I would also say that if you stumble on it, either as a football fan or a fan of another club, then you're more than welcome. And I hope you'll enjoy the company of the three guests that will be introducing to in just a second. I also want to say a big thank you to M&M Artwork and Mirrors, who are one of the companies that support the work that I do, and Edward Meller, who are solicitors based in Stockport, who auction items, i.e., houses and properties, for you. And it's also an opportunity if you're a buyer to get a property through them, and they're very, very good. I had the pleasure of watching one of their auctions take place the other day, and it was really exciting. And they were fighting for the people to get the best deal that they could. So thanks very much to them. Right, let me introduce my guests. First up, our star guest this week is former City striker Uwe Rosler, who I've known for a long time now and who has been in football, in management, and is loved by City fans high and wide. So thanks very much, Uwe, for joining us. I've also got a regular, Tony, who you'll have seen on the podcast and the vlogs in the past, but a newbie too in James Cogsey, who is well, I'm going to get him to introduce himself in just a moment, but he has particular skills, if you like, that as well as being a City fan, he's bringing to the podcast. But let me start by talking to you, Uwe. City got a 1-1 draw yesterday at Arsenal. I've been seeing what fans have been saying. And I have to say, to a certain extent, I agree that I was a bit surprised that City went so defensive late on in that game. But I also saw some comments by Bernardo Silva. He felt it was unfair that Arsenal had two extra days to prepare for the game and said that City felt a little bit tired and that maybe they fell back into that defensive line because of that. And of course, Pep Guardiola said it wouldn't have been the way he chose to play. What did you make of the game as a whole and what City did, in that game? I'm obviously going to have to ask, because we do all this on Zoom, Uwe to unmute himself now because he's muted. So we can't hear what he's saying. But he'll do that in just a second. There
Okay.
you go. He's right
Yes,
now.
yes,
So
yes.
what did you
Sorry.
make? What did you make of the game then? And what did fatigue play a part, do you think?
As a first and foremost, I was a player and I was a coach. And obviously, 48 hours more recovery, more preparation for a crucial game in the season is a big advantage for Arsenal. I wouldn't go on so far and say uh, put tiredness into the context of the match plan. I think Pep opted to play very pragmatic. Uh, you could see with Donnarumma, we're not trying out to play. That is fact. The pressure from Arsenal, they press us sometimes with four, with three consistently. So we could not establish at any point in the game our play. We would have liked to play, but Arsenal didn't allow us to play. We went long very often from the keeper, also an open play, pretty direct. And obviously, Pep had a Pep worked in Germany, and Germany is a lot of transitions, a lot of counter-attacking football, and he has two players up front with enormously pace, and the supply line with Phil Foden and Bernardo with can play those, and Reinders can play those fantastic balls like they did after 3 minutes for the goal for Haaland. So I was a little bit surprised that we not at any point in the game we could got control of the game, and the stats 70 to 30 or nearly speaks volume. What I'm really happy of is that the players show enormously character, togetherness for a team who normally is used to have the ball. And believe me, that it's not easy to then reverse and play such a mentally strong game by not having the ball. And they gave nothing away, nearly nothing away. And unfortunately, 3 minutes, 2 minutes before the end, we made a little mistake in the back line, and it was a fantastic goal for Martinelli.
Were you surprised though that given what you said about City playing a more counter-attacking game and being prepared to play these long balls, that in that last 10 or 15 minutes when City were under siege, that they didn't at least leave either Erling Haaland or Jeremy Doku, somebody, in other words, with pace, who could play on the counter-attack, to at least make Arsenal think we can't throw everybody forward here. We've got to be aware of the potential from City too. Did that surprise you?
I think Pep has to manage Holland. I mean, Mamouche is injured. I think the game's coming thick and fast till the next international break, and then Erling has to play another 2 matches for Norway. So in the last couple of years, Erling had his fair share of injuries, and he has to be managed very carefully. And when you're playing that counter-attacking football, you have to cover a lot of meters. It's not when you control the games like City does 95% of their games. Then for Erling, the meters is not so long. He's concentrating on sharp movements in the box, on counter pressing. And but when you're playing counter attack, he like the goal, he was sprinting 70 meters full out, and he did that 8, 9, 10 times. And I think that is where the risk is very high on soft tissue injuries.
Obviously, you've spent a lot of your career in Scandinavia, and I've talked to you a little bit about this before, but just give our viewers and listeners a little insight as to how much of a phenomena Erling Haaland is in Norway. Obviously, Oscar Bob's also part of City's squad, and there is an upcoming game for City in Norway against Bodo Glimt. I would imagine that's going to be pretty special too. So, what's the reaction in Scandinavia? They must be so full of admiration for the City Norwegians.
I think Norway, I think they knacked the code now, the national team. I think they have a settled, established 13, 14 players. They have world-class players like Erling, like Ødegaard. Nusa is a very exciting player from Red Bull. And obviously Oscar Bob, I love him to bits. So they're having offensively so many good options. And they are exciting to watch. And okay, you played against Moldova, but you have to score 5 goals, and when you see Alan's numbers for the national team, and they're unbelievable. Is no one else can do that. For him, it's the most important thing is keep his hunger, keep his energy, and stay fit. And then he will score goals because he's born to score.
I know it's a little way off, but have you had any insight in your career to Bodo Glimt above the Arctic Circle? What's it going to be like up there?
Yeah, I coached in Norway 6 years, so my teams we went to Bodø Glimt. Artificial pitch is I'm not admirer of artificial pitch, I have to say. Over many years there was advantage. Now the Norwegian league, there's only 3 or 4 teams having grass, the rest all having artificial pitches. This is also a reason why Bodø Glimt they train every day. Doesn't matter 10 minus or rain or snow or heat. They always train on the same pitch on the same condition. They have a very defined style of play, and they are very exciting to watch. I compare them a little bit with the Rosenborg team under Niels Arne Eggen in the 90s, who was a regular in the Champions League. But I think the strength of Bodø Glimt is the team. They have good players, but very often when you see the good players got sold abroad, they come in very quick back. But the strength is the pack, the strength is the team. They have such a very sophisticated playing style. The coach doing a fantastic job, and the conditions you have to get used to the coldness, to the artificial, and also to the stadium. There's no excitement in the stadium. I don't think many City players have ever played in front of an audience like that. So there's a lot of things to cope with. But when you have the right mindset, you go there and win.
It'll be pitch black in January, and I suppose the Northern Lights will be twinkling above there as well. So it'll be quite an experience one way and another, won't it?
Yeah, don't forget your anorak. I think it's pretty cold there. Normally in January there's no league football because of the extreme weather condition up north. But I was working for television, and they had a winter game when they played against AS Rome, and they won 6-1. And Roma could not cope with the conditions, and I think that is the mindset is playing a crucial role when you're going up there. Nobody really want to play that game, but you have to, and you have to win it. Because I can promise you one thing, Bodo Klimt will be motivated 1,000%. It's their game of their life.
Well, coming back to the Arsenal game, Tony, what did you make of what you saw then? And I mean, the first half an hour, I thought City were imperious actually, and could have easily got more than the one goal that they did. But then I don't know whether they tired. I don't know whether Arsenal started to play differently. What was your take on what you saw?
I agree with Uwe, to be honest, in terms of it was, I mean, I can say good game management. Obviously, we didn't get the win, so it wasn't necessarily great game management. But at the same time, when you've had those many games as we've had, those three in the last 8 days, I said, I think on the podcast or off it to you, Cheesy, that I'll take 2 wins out of the next three. I wasn't even planning on, a draw, so I'll take that. I think I would have liked to see a forward stay on, and I think for me, if we were looking at kind of the squad, it was obviously the same squad 3 games in a row. And we do obviously I know we've got a lot of injuries, but at the same time there are players. You've got Spino there, we've got Bob who's not injured, who could have been rotated in maybe the Napoli game or the Arsenal if he doesn't think that they're up for the Arsenal Champions League game. Could have rotated them in a little bit for Napoli to rest some of the players. But that said, given how many games we've had, where we are in the season, if you said at the beginning of the season a draw at the Emirates, I would have took it. So I can't grumble too much, although I would have liked us to keep forward on and kind of have that attacking outlet because I think although we defended brilliantly yesterday, which was really positive for me because I think we've struggled at the back over the last few seasons. Obviously, we've seen defenders rotated in, midfielders becoming fullbacks, and all sorts of different attempts. And I think for me yesterday, one of the standout performances was pushing off. Like similarly with the derby when I was talking about O'Reilly, I think those two players so far this season have had fantastic games. And yeah, I love it to see when they're on the team sheet, especially pushing up, gives me that little bit of confidence you'd have, in with players in the past.
You think when Kushinov went off, that was a bit of a turning point?
I won't necessarily say turning point because we had, I think, 9 defensive players at one point, so it shouldn't all be on one player. But I do like the solidity he gives at the back, like Diaz does as well. So I think for me, I'm a bit more optimistic with the back players. We always used to go into games thinking one mistake, they're going to score, and then we've got to get two kind of thing. Whereas I don't have that anxiousness when they're attacking us now at the back. And I do feel, especially with Donnarumma at the back as well, I think he had a fantastic game. Obviously, I know the goalie was kind of in no man's land, but he didn't really have an option because he was kind of going towards the free ball, pulling back. So yes, positionally, he could have done a little bit better, but it wasn't really his fault. It was a great goal, and there's not much we could have done about it. Bar that, we defended perfectly, and at the end of it, people would have said Pep masterclass if they hadn't scored because he'd done what he'd done, managed the game. So I think overall, not the best City in the second half, but at the same time, if you look at it from the defensive perspective, I think it was a great City that we've not had in the past.
James, now it's time to introduce you. I mean, James, I bumped into you before, and you came back into contact with me and said, "Listen, I'm a qualified physiotherapist, and maybe I'd be an interesting guest." And I've had a chat to you, and I think you're going to be more than just a one-off guest. Hopefully, you'll be one of our team going forward. But the first appearance, I want you to just paint a little picture then of your City supporting career, if you want to call it that, and the job that you do, which has brought you to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Ian. Thanks for having me on. Love the show. And my City career as such, or as a fan, I first went to see Manchester City in 1993 against Chelsea in April, and Uwe scored that day. So Uwe is a bit of a hero of mine. And then I've supported City obviously ever since. Seen us go through some pretty bad days at the beginning, and then seen some of the best days could ever possibly have as a fan. So I think that's always been a good grounder for me, sort of looking at the perspective of where we've come from to where we are now, and things have changed, which is it's just amazing to see. And to have Pep as manager has always been was always a long held dream of mine when he was at Barcelona to think, oh, one day could we ever do what we've done? So it's been a great journey, and I guess this is what it's like to being a City fan. with the changes that have been made, seeing like the players we can bring in now and the facilities and the structure. It'd be interesting to hear how Uwe feels. He might have seen some differences from when he played. But my specialism as such is I'm a sports injuries musculoskeletal physiotherapist. I've been a physiotherapist for over 17 years now. I'm currently a lecturer at the University of Nottingham, but I've worked in sport, I've worked in the NHS, I've worked for the Ministry of Defence as well. So I've got some experience on injuries as such and how to help people recover and rehab from them. But also, I like to think I can provide some insight into how sometimes these injuries might develop, which might seem quite obvious at times, but there's sometimes other factors that can influence that. And there's some things I've seen already with City's squad that might indicate some things. But one thing I would say at the beginning here is I think what Pep's trying to do with the team, and I take on everyone's point, taking Haaland off at the weekend was a little sad, but Uwe was spot on in that management of where Haaland is. And if we lose Haaland at the moment, we're going to really struggle. So teams like City will be planning for how they perform. And we obviously want them to perform really well every game. But in terms of where the season goes, they'll want to be hitting levels of form by obviously the back end of the season, the business end of the season as such. So I think at the moment we might be seeing some stuff from Pep and the team where there is management of minutes, sure, making sure that players are getting rhythm, making sure that they are not overplaying, so their tissues in their body are not being overstressed. Because when a player's tissue becomes too stressed, it loses its capacity to adapt, and that's when injury often occurs. So it's been interesting to see so far some of the changes, and seeing what we did against Arsenal by going into such a defensive shape might be part of what we're looking at here.
When you were a manager, indeed, when you were a player, Uwe, were you very aware of your body and what it could and couldn't do? Were you surrounded by sports scientists and people like James who could give you that advice? And has that changed over the years?
Massively had changed. I think when I would have had the service and the pressure and the structure around me, guiding me in terms of pre-activation, in terms of muscle strengthening, but also recovery protocols, I could have easily extend my career by 2 or 3 years on the top level. And I remember I had 2 hernia operations in Southampton in the space of 3 months, and basically my career was over. I never had a proper recovery protocol from the injury, gym sessions, rehabilitation program. And 3 weeks I was on the pitch and played, but I lost my strength. I lost a yard of speed, and I was relying on those parameters. I was a mover on the back line, and I always tried to find spaces and running behind and score. And when you can't get away from people, then your game is limited. And I think these days the players playing far more games in general, high quality games like Erland plays national games, Champions League games, Premier League, the hardest league in the world, and cup competitions. But I also think more games, but also the service around the players, providing them with the best possible things in sports science, will help them. But we in general, the football family, they need to find a way to shorten the match program over the year. The games are too many. It's really the players running out of steam. Yeah, people will say they earn a lot of money, but we need to be careful here about human beings. We have to look after their careers, after their longevity as players. And at the moment, it's not working. When you saw the Summer World Cup for club teams, no preseason basically. One preseason game City, I think they had, and starting the season off immediately, you have no base to go from. So you build your base in the season basically in when it's already you play for 3 points. So I think this is crazy. And UEFA, FIFA, they need to change things.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Tony Pep said that the Palermo game, wasn't enough, and I think that's basically what Uwe has said as well. And he then said that the early games, the first three games, which saw City lose to Tottenham and Brighton, as well as beating Wolves, of course, was effectively their pre-season. Are you confident now, having watched the last week that we've just seen, a Manchester United victory, a victory in the Champions League against Napoli, and then a well-earned draw, let's put it that way, at Arsenal, that pre-season worked, and now City are up and running?
Um, no, because I'm a pessimist, as you know. So when it comes to City, I think no matter what's happened over the years, you assume the worst and hope for the best. But I think it's too early and it's completely different when, and I know what he means. He means in terms of the match sharpness and the fitness as a pre-season, but the Premier League is a lot more intense than what pre-season would have been. So again, if we go back to, I'm sure James can come in on this in a bit, but if we go back to the type of training, the type of matches you're playing, and how much you're exerting yourself, you're doing that 100% more in a Premier League game than you would potentially in a friendly where you might rotate half the whole team come half time. So I think I know what he means. He means in terms of these games, and we're finding our feet, getting our rhythm, which is what I said last time in terms of the new players gelling. And I'm not disheartened by the way we started when we lost those few games. And even, we beat United. But again, they were pretty poor on the day. I think, yes, we won, but it flattered us the scoreline in terms of them being poor and rather than, we brushed them aside. Similarly with Napoli down to 10 men, I think. Again, even that game, we made slightly hard work of it. So we're finding our feet, but I don't think we're quite there 100% at the races yet.
James, I could ask you a million questions, right? I don't know where to start. I mean, I could talk to you about the more likelihood of a certain build of a player, like Bernardo versus Erling Haaland. And does that mean that an Erling Haaland is more likely to pull muscles? So there's a subject we could talk about. I could also ask you about a player like John Stones, and while you might know the perfect insight of what his problems are, you might have an idea or a guess as to why he appears to be fairly fragile in terms of his sort of physical ability and availability. Where do you want to start? What insight can you give us, James?
Well, it's some really good questions there, Ian. And I think the first thing I'll say about injuries is that they are what we call multifactorial. So often with a player, or if anyone really, there's often more than one factor at play for an injury. Sure, there might be a factor which is more predominant, more pressing, but it's always looking at the whole person. And again, Uwe mentioned a bit of that before, which was really nice to hear. So let's take, for example, Erling Haaland, 6'4" against Bernardo Silva, very different builds. There is, of course, with anyone, an element of genetics involved in how we are built and our sort of biology, our structures. So some players might be more predisposed to certain injuries than others, and you could look at a genetic level like that. But interestingly enough, there wouldn't really be anything strong in the research to suggest that Erling is more resilient than Bernardo. I look at the games, for example, how many Bernardo's played. He's like a dynamo, he just keeps on going. And Erling is obviously very strong and very fit as well. So strength and conditioning are massively important, and you'd expect that as a given at the level that these players are playing at. But there's also an element called like the systemic element of how well the body's actually running. And I look at someone like John Stones, where I absolutely love John Stones, and I think myself, he was my man of the match in the Champions League final. He's a player who looks an absolute specimen. He's clearly fit and strong, but there might be something what we call systemically not quite running as, how can I put it, as balanced with John as we'd like. So he might be someone who's more predisposed to more inflammation in the body, which might be a reason why he is getting more injuries compared to someone who doesn't. Now, I could speak for a long time about reasons as to why someone might experience more inflammation than others. You could make an argument from the bits I've read around Haaland, around his diet and around what he eats and drinks and some of the things he does. For example, he does a little bit of red light therapy between games. The evidence is a little bit on the fence with that, but some would argue that that might be a reason he is less inflamed maybe between games, hence he can play more. whereas John might be slightly different. So it's hard to always compare directly with these players. However, there's other things you need to take into account. So a big factor, which we'd say generally that can predict injury, are increased levels of stress and poor levels of sleep. Now, that's the same for anyone. So a lot of top level clubs, and what I've done clinically is often look very closely at the person's sleep pattern, let's say, and stress level. If you take into account something that stuck with me, going back to John Stones, and please correct me, guys, here on the pod, but I think there was a period of time he was out for like a year, wasn't he? And it was sort of assumed that was his time done at City. But then he came back and he had that renaissance and was amazing. Now, from what I read, I think he was going through quite a lot of personal stuff in his life. Now, that kind of level of stress can be absolutely significant on anyone and could actually be a really big predictor in how a player might present with an injury. So Phil Foden was another example last season. We couldn't get Phil fit on the pitch, and what a player he is. So it's another factor just to bring in, that a player's life outside the pitch is really important, and it needs to be hopefully happy and stable. If you get a happy and stable environment, that player will often thrive. And that's why, for example, you do see some players, they come into that environment and they absolutely relish it straight away. They love where they're living, they love the whole setup. Certain players do struggle a little bit. And for example, and I don't know any of this for certain, by the way, not spoken to any of these players directly, but Calvin Phillips is another example. He never really quite got going at City, did he? Clearly a good player, but perhaps that step up and that level that we were asking him to play at and Pep's way and systems, perhaps he struggled a little bit with that, and he's needed some time to adjust within that. So, as I say, injuries can be multifactorial. We could talk about stress, we could talk about sleep, talk even things about just the weather. I think it was Nolito, wasn't it? He signed for City and he lasted maybe a year, or if that, and he just didn't like the weather. Couldn't. Some players literally just don't thrive in the environment they're in. Not to say there's anything going on bad behind the scenes, but they just might not get on within that. So when looking at players, I'm looking a lot at those kind of things. It might be that they are at risk of playing a bit too much, and Uwe was spot on about the games. I think it's a genuine concern. And Pep's got a really difficult job. He's got a great squad, lots of high-level personality. Players who are the highest level of driven and determination. They all want to play. It's not easy to drop any of them. So he's got to keep a happy squad. He's got to keep a motivated squad. He's also got players competing against each other for those spaces on the team. You put all that into a mix, it can become quite difficult. As well as the last thing I would say is the travel element. The travel can take a huge amount on a player. Flying, even though they'll probably fly first class or business class and they're very comfortable, flights can do funny things to people. I've certainly found it myself. I get off a flight, my muscles feel tight, my digestion can change. Players would be no different to that either. So again, when we're looking at the amount of games, but the amount of travel within those games, it's a genuine concern that if the players have been exposed to all that, sleep patterns are all over the place because of that. Again, these are other factors to bring into the pot of why you might see certain players struggle to play 2, 3, 4, 5 games on the bounce. Others might be more adapted to that style of play and are becoming very good within that. So there's a lot to bring to the table there, Ian.
Fascinating to listen to that. I mean, it makes me wonder why anybody would want to be a manager, Uwe, because people think that it's just about tactics and coaching and whatnot. And you, as a manager, I don't know whether you were managed when you were a player in this way, but you have to have that overview, that the full knowledge of the player and their home life and their experience and all those other things that James has been talking about. Why would you want to be a manager, a coach, Uwe?
Because football is my life. I think I need adrenaline. I need to compete. I can't compete by myself anymore, so I need to have players who are competing for me, or for the club and for the fans. But I think the biggest joy for me in coaching is to make people better. And make people better, that means I make the team better. And when the team, they can fully fill a whole week's preparation with the most important day in the week is a Saturday, to then put it into 3 points and a good performance and make people happy in around the place, especially our supporters. That's the biggest joy for me. winning, competing, making players better, and be the best version you can be. And I think I find it hard now. So 3 months is okay. I'm recharged now. So, but now getting already restless. So watching games, analyzing games, learning from other teams. I'm watching Mallorca training, driving over to Mallorca's training ground and watching them training. So I think it's a lifestyle. You need to be born for that, to come through this and have a longevity. I've been now 22 years a manager or head coach. So, and I'm still not finished. So hopefully I have another 5 years at least.
Would you want to do it, Tony?
No, definitely not. It's too much pressure, and I think, yeah, 40,000 plus people shouting your name, and yeah, I'm much more for the stands rather than the pitch, unfortunately. I'm not built that way. But I was wondering there, just to ask Uwe really, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, about the defensive positioning we took up in the second half, and he was arguing with me about saying, well, this is Linda's. Liverpool have done this to us in the past, and when they come to us when he was under Klopp and that side of it. And I mean, we've had this discussion on the podcast as well of Pep never changing his system, even when we wanted him to, the kind of the Champions League away, Real Madrid semi-final or whatever it might be. And you're like, well, why is he doing this? So, and he's never done it until yesterday, even when we've had those games, etc. So that got me thinking, well, is that an influence from obviously and Linda's who he brought in? Uwe, how much do your assistants and how much do your coaches that you have around you impact your decisions and how you approach games? Obviously, it's ultimately the manager's choice or the head coach's choice, but how much of that are you looking to get from the coaches around you?
As the first and foremost, I would like to add something to you, but it was very interesting, the points you just mentioned. Um, I think, I think City, our team, is not firing off all cylinders. Pre-season was too short. The introduction of so many new players, very good players, players in the mid-20s, the best years ahead of them, with the best coach in the world. He will make them better, but he needs time on the training ground. And this is why we're coming back of how important the preseason is, to integrate new players, to make them familiar with your style of play. We have seen in the past that some players needed 6 months, 12 months to understand how Pep wants them to play. And now we throw them out and they're doing really well. When you see Reinders already, Reinders, top player. You mentioned O'Reilly. I'm a big fan of him. He's a midfield player playing now left back. We're having now, since many years, we're having two left backs by trade, and I think I really like that. I think we missed a lot of substance to dominate games. Obviously, King Kev, we all know about that, but we also Gundogan. Gundogan was crucial in that aspect. You mentioned the fact that oh, right back. Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker, he gave us so much attacking outlet on the side with pace and power, but also defensively. He covered the ground really well and the spaces really well. So that we ending up going in that game early on in the season and deciding to play like that over the majority of the game, I think is absolutely fine for me. I'm not worried that we certainly being a completely counter-attacking team. We will play very soon Pep football again, but we need time. The manager needs time to work with those new players and also with players like Doku. When I see Doku now, that was encouraging. I was at the derby. I compare him a little bit with Sterling. When Sterling came, when Pep came to City, he made Sterling better in 1 year. His output in terms of goals and assists, the numbers went sky high. I think he can do that with Doku as well, and I can see already signs that he is a little bit calmer with the final pass. He's a little bit more get his head up, and find the right player at the right spaces, and also score goals by himself. I think there is so much quality in this squad. The main thing is now is to start the season reasonably well, stay in contention, introduce the new players, The main thing is to keep your key players fit, and this is unbelievable important.
James, I love watching Doku. Speaking now as a fan, not as a physio, the fact that he can change direction so quickly, can accelerate so quickly, he seems so well balanced and two-footed. And whilst there have been critics that have said he's had no end product, which is what Uwe's sort of alluding to, and now maybe that's changing. Is that the type of player you want to watch? It's certainly the type of player I want to watch.
Yeah, I love Doku. I think he's fantastic. I mean, it's kind of bittersweet because I still am a massive Jack Grealish fan. But you know, this is what happens within players move on, sadly. But I was thinking a bit about Doku, and I was reminding myself of how much I loved Leroy Sané and missing that sort of pace on the wing, and like how Sterling became that pace and product. And I'm just delighted to see Doku now start to add that end product there. I think there was a goal last season where Doku started on the left and he played this beautiful outside of the right foot ball across the 6-yard box for Nunes to put in. Starting to see, I think, okay, he's starting to get it. And that's sort of a little bit what I was alluding to before about certain players need that time to really integrate into the. We talk about culture. You can talk about culture of a country you move to, or a city you move to, or a team you move to, and to see that those ideas they need time to implement and time on the training pitch as well. So it's great to see Doku is adapting, and I think it's frightening where he could go with his skill set, and he's got, he's so strong as well.
When you look at the next few games, Tony, Burnley at home, Huddersfield away, um, trip to Brentford and Monaco. Those are the games before the international break. They all look winnable to me. Obviously, it was a tricky one down at Arsenal, and I know you self-proclaimed half glasses half empty. But do you not look at those games now and think there is a proper opportunity now to build momentum to really make chase after what is above City at the moment because they're a little bit lower than they would be. And before you answer the question, I keep harping on about this. I compare like for like games with last season, and at the moment we are 4 points ahead from the same fixtures as last season. So when people are looking at it and thinking, not made the best of starts. We didn't get a point at Arsenal, so that's a bonus point. We didn't beat United at home, that's 3. Wolves we won away at, Tottenham we lost at home at, so we are on Brighton we lost away at, so we're actually 4 points above. So can I get your glass to fill up a little bit more?
Yes and no. So yes, these are the games that I was looking at, thinking, right, if we can crack on with these, then we can start building that momentum and have it just helps kind of that confidence going into the rest of the season. I mean, Liverpool, yes, they've been lucky, but 5 out of 5, they're up there, the whole team's there, and it's going to take a lot to stop Liverpool, not because of the points and whatever, but just in terms of the attitude around the squad, the mentality that brings into the camp as well. Now, with the next few games, my issue in the past, not issue, but my thoughts have always been we always struggle with, not necessarily struggle, but we always struggle with the lower league teams simply because sometimes I found that everyone wants to beat City, yet we don't necessarily match that in some of those lower sides. We'll always have that in the intensity of an Arsenal game or Spurs or United, for example, or Champions League semis, etc. But when we're going to Wigan away, Stoke away, maybe, then it's a lot harder to match that intensity that they have wanting to beat City, the champions, the big boys. So hopeful, confident, not half full. I'm still in the middle.
Next game up, Uwe, is Huddersfield away in the League Cup on Wednesday. And I would imagine that we're going to see 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 changes. If you were City manager, if you were Pep Guardiola at the moment, do you do a training session on sort of Tuesday or even Wednesday morning, a light one, whatever, with the players who are not going to play, preparing them and work separately with the ones who are going to play? How do you manage that situation when there's going to obviously be a big turnover of players for that game?
I think first and foremost, you need to make a decision in the club, what sort of how much you value this cup competition. Have you priorities? Is it the league? Is it the Champions League? Is it the FA Cup? Is it the League Cup? So that's point one. How many changes you will do then? I think we will see a lot of changes. I think rightly so. I think it is when you have such a good squad, the players need to play. This is Pep spoke a lot about when players doesn't get games. This is not creating a good climate in the dressing room. So players are professionals. They compete against each other, but they also need games. So I think that's important to give those players a game, a competitive game, and we all expect to win that game. But I think going into the next two matches, Huddersfield and Burnley, we will see a completely different team. We will not see that sort of match plan, or we will not see how the game will pan out like it was in Arsenal. So in Arsenal. So I was close to say Highbury, and but I think we will go back. We will have a lot of possession. We control the game, and we have to break them down. And we have the quality of players. We have the technical ability of the players. We have the style of play to make that happen, and that is all what we expect from this squad of players, and I think they will deliver that. I'm not worried at all.
The last thing City want, I would suggest, is to what happened to United when they lost at Grimsby. And I don't want to be negative in any way, but if, as Tony is suggesting, and he's not the only one who's saying this, that Liverpool are going to be very, very difficult to stop in the Premier League, and the Champions League we know is a tough, tough competition to win, and City were, of course, trophyless last year. I personally would like to see a pretty strong side at Huddersfield get through that competition and ideally go on and win the League Cup, because I think it gives City a lot of confidence and also gets a trophy on the cabinet. And you don't really want to sort of, I'm not suggesting they would do this, but throw away the game. I don't for 1 second say they would throw it away, but effectively that's what United did. They underestimated Grimsby and paid the penalty. We don't want that to happen at Huddersfield, do we?
I think we are not in the same situation like Man United, that play a lot of other factors a big part in that Grimsby defeat. I think we have a big squad. We have uh, top players who are very, very hungry to play minutes, to play in competitive matches. We have the best academy in the Premier League, who producing a lot of good players. I think there must be some very talented, exciting 18, 19, 20-year-old ones who also waiting for their chance to step out for the first team. I think I expect us to win. I think Pep is not the manager who throws away competitions, but sometimes, I grown up in the area where Arsene Wenger was one of the first managers who was clearly said the League Cup he played with the youth team, and I don't think we will do that, but I think there will be changes, but it's also a great opportunity for the youngsters. And in the past, a lot of them impressed big time in those matches, and I think in Huddersfield they will do that again. But they will always have a strong line from experienced players in the team. So we having a goalkeeping position, we having so many good goalkeepers. So I don't expect Donnarumma to play, but that makes not a big difference because we have a lot of good goalkeepers, and we have defenders available, midfielders available. Where we're lacking is number 9. With Mamouche not available, that will be difficult.
I'm going
That
to
Erling
suck up
goes
in
out.
all three of you now just to finish off this podcast. I'll start by asking you, James, that, is this the game where, and this is the Huddersfield game I'm talking about, where there have to be rested players because of the a game every 3 days scenario that we're in now? Has that got to happen physically?
I think it's an interesting one, this. I think there'll be an element of balance here where Pep and the team's job is to ensure that the players are staying fit, staying sharp, and they will be looking at certain games ahead. So whilst there might be some players who, on certain metrics might be used, might well need the rest, the likelihood is I think he's going to try and keep some minutes going in the players' legs to keep that momentum, to keep that build. because I think they're still coming through a bit of a pre-season here. So this is a good game actually to use to get some players. Some minutes is better than nothing. So for example, let's take Rodri. I imagine some people think take him out. He's played a few games recently. He's been out for so long. Part of me can see the argument of that, but part of me would want to keep him playing because he's building his confidence game by game by game, and more minutes. But would you want to play him necessarily for the full 90, knowing that we've got Burnley and Champions League games coming up? Probably not. So I think there's an element where, unless some players are already carrying a knock and they're desperate to get out, I imagine Pep's going to try and keep some sort of momentum going. But it's a great opportunity for some of the players knocking on the door to show what they can do. And that's great for competition and again, creating that healthy competitive culture within the squad, which can only drive forward performance, hopefully for the rest of the season.
What do you want to see from the Huddersfield game, Tony?
I mean, Pep goes into every game wanting to win, and I think we're going to see what we've seen in previous seasons, where we'll probably see about 5, 6 players probably change. Yes, we'll have some of the youth team in there, but also we'll see, Savino start, potentially Oscar Bob starting, Ake starting, the ones who haven't had as much game time over the last 3 games there. And so it'll be a mixture. And then obviously on the bench, we'll still, have Haaland if he doesn't start, and we'll still have those players on the bench. So if we do by any chance go down, we have that option to bring them on, give that extra bit of creativeness and bring that back onto the pitch, really. So I think, yes, we're going to see a change, but I'm still expecting a strong side and, going out to win the game.
Final question to Uwe. You've already talked about the Huddersfield game, so I'm going to ask you a completely different type of question now, which is, what is your favourite memory of your time at City, Uwe?
Oh,
Scoring that goal when James was there the first time.
no, it's obviously the chip over Schmeichel. I got asked. I scored actually against United a few goals, but I never was on the winning side. So we were always very, very, very close. But for some reason we didn't luck that little bit extra. I think, but that was a fantastic moment. 9,000 people. I remember it behind the goal. It was a FA Cup. 9,000 following. That was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And scoring 4 goals against Notts County was also in my memories. Yeah, I can't remember all those good moments, but it's many years ago. So, but I really enjoyed my time, and Manchester City changed my life. Coming to England changed my life, and I'm very, very grateful and thankful for that.
Well, I'm hoping that the two of us are going to do a dinner together sometime in the none too distant future when you can fit it in your diary. And I'm sure they'll have the opportunity to explore a lot more of your career and your life, which I've always found very fascinating. I've read your book, of course, and I've known you for quite a while now. And having a German mother as I did, I feel as if there's a little bit more of a connection as well and understanding. So I look forward to that, Uwe. But thank you
Thank you.
to the three of you, to James. Nice debut on the podcast. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon. To Tony and to Uwe, and thanks to you for listening. It is, of course, free, this podcast, and that's due to the people who support me, like Edward Meller. So feel free to subscribe. That means the podcast just drops into your box. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and equally, you'll get notified, ring the bell and all that business, and you'll find out whenever new content goes up. So thanks very much for listening. Thanks for being a blue if you are. If not, you should be. And we'll see you again on the next podcast, which will be recorded after the Burnley game. So probably on Sunday, which is when we normally do the podcasts. So have a great week. If you're going to Huddersfield, I'll look out for you there. You can appear on the vlog if you see me. And have a good week. And if you don't remember anything else from this podcast except this one thing, just remember this. It's always, still is, and always will be great to be a blue.